It's time for another history video, and today we'll be looking at the second game in the Legend of Spyro series, The Eternal Nights. Though after playing through it myself, I'd like to change the title to The Eternal Suffering, because my goodness, this game loved torturing me. I want to say Krome Studios learned from A New Beginning's mistakes, making some excellent changes in The Eternal Night and crafting an exciting, challenging, and flawless game. But that wouldn't be completely true. While some issues I had with The New Beginning have been improved upon for The Eternal Nights, others have been made exponentially worse, and it's these issues that force me to say it. I don't like this game. To put into perspective how irritating this game was for me, this is the first time since doing the history series that I felt compelled to cheat in order to finish the bloody thing. That's right guys, I cheated to get a game done. You may now think of me as a terrible person, but I say blame the crappy mechanics and not the crappy player. As I said before, however, there were some good changes made to certain mechanics in the Eternal Nights. Mechanics I'll more than happily enthuse over to make up for all the griping, so fans of this game, do not fret. I'm not going to rip it apart completely, just mostly. Now, before I get into the main body of this video, I best let you guys know I'm having a little change up in how I present this one. Normally I have everything in separate sections like story, world and characters, gameplay and so on, but this time I'm going to keep it as one long section. The format in which I did the videos before, in my opinion, worked better for the first 4 Spyro games, where areas were broken up into realms and the story was quite simple. It didn't work quite so well for A Hero's Tale, and felt completely off for A New Beginning, with some sections such as story, world and characters going on for far too long. So let me know what you guys think of the new format. Anyway, let's get going before we all die of old age. So, the first thing I took note of when starting The Eternal Night was the title screen and that awesome opening theme. Come on, who doesn't love a good monk choir? The theme also sets the tone of what's to come in The Eternal Nights, and while the New Beginnings theme was light-hearted and joyous, this one sounds dark, foreboding, maybe even despairing to some. There's one other thing to take note of on this title screen, something I wasn't aware of until after I finished the game and had read up about it. Nearing the end of the title theme, if you look to the left of the screen, you'll spot a very brief flash of a dragon's head in the clouds. I won't say who it is, but by this point, it's probably obvious even to people who haven't played The Eternal Nights. Also, I'd like to say this is the first time I've ever jumped out of my skin playing a Spyro game. Even when I was expecting the flash, it still got me. Krome Studios, you dastardly people. So moving on to the first cinematic, and we get a brief glimpse of a mountain that plays a significant role later in the game. A beam of light shoots down from the heavens and into the mouth of the mountain. We're then treated to a recap of A New Beginning's ending. Spyro beats the crap out of Cinder, saves her life, and then flies away from the portal of convexity. As he does so, however, a mysterious voice calls out his name. I wonder who that could be. The cutscene ends abruptly, and we move from pre-rendered cinematic to in-game cinematic, with Spyro being woken up by his brother Sparks. It's not clear whether Spyro really heard the mysterious voice when he saved Cinder, or it was just part of his dream, as it was never heard during A New Beginning's ending cinematic. Either way, it's bloody creepy. Sparks informs Spyro that he saw Cinder sneaking out of the temple, a big no-no as all manner of creepy monsters come out at night. Sparks' voice actor, David Spade, must have been puffing on helium or something, because now he sounds oddly enough like voice actor Billy West.
Hey Spyro, some night, huh? Beautiful.
That's sarcasm, guys. Please don't do a Drax and comment telling me it is Billy West, I know it is. This isn't West's first Spyro rodeo. As some of you will remember, he cropped up in Enter the Dragonfly to do the odd voice here and there.
Hello Spyro. Unga! We Tiki getting ready for big Tiki Tourist Luau. Unga!
Unfortunately, I hate West's rendition of Sparks even more than Spade's, which is quite impressive given how much Spade bugged me. Oh, bugged, get it? Even if he was annoying at times, I have to admit Spade did pull off the sarcastic and humorous character of Sparks.
I've never gotten the respect I deserve, the praise that should be mine.
West Sparks just comes across as, well, mean really. He constantly paints Cinder in a harsh light because she used to be their enemy, even though it was established in the first game that she was under the influence of the Dark Master. Listen to him here too.
It's dangerous for any of us to be outside at night. Besides, Ignitus said you have to wait till your powers return. 'Cause you're weak.
Was that supposed to be funny? Sparks, you're not smart, you're just a knobhead. Anyway, the two head off in search of Cinder, and this is where the actual gameplay begins. Now, some of you eagle-eyed viewers may notice throughout this video that Spyro goes from fat to thin to fat again. That's because every time this bloody game starts up, it changes my widescreen options and reverts back to non-widescreen. It took me a while to notice sometimes, so I apologise if it bothers anyone. It wasn't intentional. The game makes a point of showing us the statue in the temple, and we stumble across the first of many collectibles in the game, an enchanted scriber's quill. Collecting these quills will unlock new items in the art gallery, whereas collecting the other two items, the orange and green dragon relics, will boost Spyro's health and magic. There are 40 scriber's quills, and 5 of each dragon relic to find and collect in the Eternal Nights. The game switches from platforming beat 'em up to teenage sneaking out with my friends simulator, as Spyro and Sparks carefully make their way across the room where the elders sleep, with their eyes open apparently. Once outside, we're treated to the usual tutorial, beating up poor innocent toadweeds so we can master that sweet circle button mash, and climbing a few rocks here and there. Spyro doesn't have access to any of his elemental breaths as he's still recovering from his battle with adult Cinder, so I guess it's just tail whipping, headbutting, and jumping around like a loon for now. Speaking of which, double jumping feels even more unforgiving than it did in the previous game, as Spyro seems to have less time to perform the secondary jump. This may cause problems on the longer jump and glides, unless you have no problem timing it perfectly in your head. If you're like me, however, and can't count without the aid of your fingers, you'll end up winging it for the most part and hoping for the best. Wing it. Spyro and Sparks finally catch up with Cinder, who explains she doesn't belong with them after what she did.
I'm leaving, Spyro. I don't belong here. After all I've done, all I've put you through, I can't stay.
Even though nobody blames her, well, except Sparks, but nobody likes him anyway, Cinder still feels it's best to leave and find her own path. Keen listeners may notice Cinder's voice doesn't quite sound the same as it did in A New Beginning. That's because her original voice actor, Kree Summer, left the role and it went to Mae Whitman instead. Mae Whitman's most famous voice acting role is as Katara from Avatar: The Last Airbender, but she has also had on-screen roles in films such as Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, where she played one of Ramona Flowers' crazy exes. I personally preferred Kree Summer in the role of Cinder, but seeing as she has so few lines in this game anyway, I guess it really doesn't matter. Perhaps that's why Kree Summer didn't return. Anyway, Cinder runs off into the wilds, and Spyro decides now is the time to have a nap. He blacks out and awakens in an unknown place that's similar in appearance to Convexity from A New Beginning, though with a few giant books and runes thrown in for good measure. A menacing, disembodied voice calls out to Spyro from the darkness. But luckily there's a much friendlier voice to guide him.
Do not be frightened, young dragon.
And after begging them to stop talking, everything suddenly slows down to a crawl. Congratulations, Spyro, you broke time itself. Nah, I'm kidding. He's only gone and learned a new ability. Dragon time. This ability can be started and stopped by tapping L1, but can only be used for a limited duration. The elderly voice explains that purple dragons can wield many abilities, including time itself. How convenient! Because Krome Studios made sure to throw in a seemingly endless supply of fast-paced platforming puzzles that you can test Dragon Time out on. I'm not a massive fan of gameplay that's designed around a particular mandatory ability, especially as developers usually start throwing it in wherever they can to pad out the game's length. But at least Dragon Time is a useful mechanic in the Eternal Night, and not just for platforming. I've frequently found myself utilising Dragon Time during combat to avoid an enemy's attack, something that's even more important to do in the Eternal Night, as the bad guys hit like trucks. Also, I didn't even realise strafing and dodging was still a thing in this game, because I swear when I tried the button combination, nothing happened. I even complained about it on my Discord channel, only to find out after I finished the game that it did in fact exist and I am in fact a moron. Spyro eventually reaches an orange glowing portal and the voice tells him he's not much of a purple dragon without his elemental powers. Luckily, this guy is happy to help Spyro reclaim his powers, and stepping into the orange glow reawakens Spyro's power over the element of fire. This next section of gameplay is repeated multiple times throughout the Eternal Night. Much like a New Beginnings dojo training, it serves to teach the player how to use Spyro's various elemental powers. Unlike the dojo, however, this is actually enjoyable, in no short part thanks to the variation in Spyro's breath abilities and the fact the training doesn't overstay its welcome. So what does the element of fire do now? Well, holding down square still performs a flame breath attack because, come on, that's a staple of Spyro games. But instead of lobbing out a firebomb with triangle, Spyro can now do a superheated comet dash through his enemies, which is useful for both dealing a decent amount of damage and getting out of a sticky situation. Just make sure you don't launch Spyro off a cliff edge. Unlike a New Beginning, where I found myself using one type over and over, all the elemental abilities of the Eternal Night have a use. Ice gives you a polar bomb to freeze enemies with, and an ice tail attack to knock them away. That's right guys, they actually made ice useful. Earth provides Spyro with a devastating Earth Flail.
I'll try spinning, that's a good trick.
The second ability, Earth Pound, while not as exciting, can be used to knock multiple enemies in the air, which can then be followed through with an air combo. Finally, Electricity provides Spyro with the Electric Orb, a ball of energy which travels further the longer square is held down before releasing. Pressing square again causes an electric explosion, sending most enemies flying up into the air and crash landing with a comical cartoon splat. Then there's something even better, the Electric Whirlwind. The name speaks for itself. Out of my way, peasants! As cool as these abilities are, they're a lot tougher to level up than before, which means you won't have an incredibly overpowered elemental ability early on. By the end of the game, I'd only managed to max out Ice Breath, but this didn't bother me too much as it meant combat wasn't such a one-shot affair on my part and I actually had to put in effort. After passing through the various teleport beacons, Spyro moves on to the final enemy area, where he'll regain the first Fury he learned when he started his journey way back in A New Beginning. Fire Fury. The animations for the Furies play out differently than they did before. This time we're treated to a badass in-game cutscene in which Spyro jumps into the air and releases a fiery blast of molten rock, jagged ice shards, pulsating tremors, and okay, I'm not sure what happened here, but you get the idea. Time stops for a brief second, and then slowly picks up speed again as the camera circles around Spyro, showing off his Fury ability in all its deadly glory. Every unfortunate soul in the vicinity goes boom and dies, and Spyro gets a limited duration power boost to beat up any remaining stragglers. I have to say, I really enjoyed all the animations of the Furies in this game. They were awesome already in A New Beginning, but now they're friggin' badass in the Eternal Night. And I have to sit back and applaud the developers for making me feel like an unstoppable force of nature for a few seconds. So bish bash bosh, and on to the last area in this weird dreamscape. The voice finally reveals itself to be the Chronicler, before showing Spyro a vision of a tree. Spyro then abruptly wakes up to find all is not well at the temple. Oh, that better not be what I think it is, game. Yep, it is. More apes. Joy. Though these ones look quite sickly and seem to have a bondage fetish going on. These new apes, known as wraiths, have the same attacks as before, and even brought along their rabid death hounds for Spyro to play with. Now, this gives me an opportunity to talk about a problem I have with the combat in the Eternal Night. If Spyro knocks down an enemy, he can still do damage to it while it's down, but the enemy is free to get back on its feet and is even immune for a few seconds to any more knockdowns. That's fair enough, otherwise some of these battles would be a cakewalk if I could continuously spam knockdowns and knockups. Why, oh why then, can enemies continuously hit and stunlock Spyro? This is especially irritating in the Eternal Night because someone decided the way to make combat more difficult was to throw so many enemies on the screen at once that you can't even see Spyro. Add in the fact that Spyro can still be hit by some attacks even after the animation finishes, and said attacks hit Spyro for massive damage, and pretty soon you've got a dead dragon on your hands. You know earlier when I said I cheated to get part of the game done? This is what I was talking about. No matter how aggressive, careful or smart I played, I would continuously die to this ridiculous horde of bad guys due to a combination of the camera hating me, enemies so large I can't see where I'm telling Spyro to go, and the constant stun, smack, die. So Krome Studios, if you're going to allow enemies to continuously stun lock me, let me do the same back. Or even better, don't let either party be able to stun lock. Problem solved. Right, so where were we? Ah yes, murder and puzzle solving, the basic ingredients of this game. To access the temple, you'll have to make use of bulk dragon time to make it through the first door after you've pushed the various pedestals into place and lit the torches. By the way, I hope you're a fan of repetitiveness, because this section of gameplay goes on forever. Don't worry, I'll speed this up a little bit. Light torches, kill apes, go through door, beat up spiders, don't realise I have to finish the spiders with horn dive, platform, torch, platform, snail, die to snail. Mash the L1 button to skip the cutscene. Finish my rant about why the checkpoints are so spread out in this game. Kill snail, go through door, and oh my gosh, does this ever end. I'm not even exaggerating. According to Windows Explorer, this entire section of gameplay from first encountering the apes to meeting up with Ignitus took 32 minutes. 32 minutes of the same combat and unnecessary padding. At least they blessed us with some actual new enemies. Spyro finally catches up to Ignitus, who's kicking ass and flaming apes, and is ordered to help by his mentor. Right, let's show Ignitus just how awesome we are. Oh, okay. Bye, Ignitus. Spyro's left on his own to fight the remaining apes and deal with an assassin riding a shadow wing, which brings us to a rather drab bit of gameplay that'll crop up multiple times in the Eternal Nights. Spyro is locked on the X-axis and can only strafe left and right and dodge and throw a firebomb. You'd think this guy would be a proper boss fight and have difficult to avoid abilities too, but no. Just hold down square to charge at the firebombs to throw at the assassin, and dodge left and right to avoid the Shadow Wings bolts. Bish bash bosh, the assassin does his "I'll be back" line, and flies away. And Spyro makes his way into the temple to meet with the other dragons. They all have a little gathering around the fancy pool of visions, and are shown the tree from Spyro's dreams, with him standing at the foot of it. Spyro spills the beans on what he's been dreaming about, including the mountain draped in shadow and the 2 moons, to which Toridori exclaims,
"The mountain of Malefor."
Whoa! Am I the only one that thought that was weird?
I'm with you on that one, Sparks. Spyro also mentions the Chronicler, which surprises the other dragons, as they haven't heard his name in ages apparently. Nobody writes letters, checks in to see how he is from time to time. Anyway, we get a bit more detail about the inevitable eclipsing of the celestial moons, which will bring about the Night of Eternal Darkness. Look guys, it ties in with the title! Ignitus then gives orders to the dragons, sending them in various directions before telling Spyro to head for an ancient grove where the tree from his dreams most likely resides. That's the last we see of the Elder Dragons for the rest of the game, so I want to take this opportunity to say that Gary Oldman, who voices Ignitus, sounds incredibly bored during this whole scene of dialogue, delivering his lines so half-heartedly you think he'd had somewhere else to be in 5 minutes.
The Chronicler is an ancient dragon of immeasurable wisdom. Though I've only heard stories. In fact, I've had my doubts as to the legitimacy of the tales.
He's not the only one who sounds slightly off either. For most of the game, Elijah Wood sounds like he's just woken up from an alcohol-induced coma and doesn't know where he is.
What is it you want, Sparks? Cinder, what are you doing out here? It's dangerous. Cinder, I don't want you to go. Sparks? Sparks? Sparks, where are you?
Could someone bring him a coffee or something? The other Guardians voice actors put a bit more effort in, but they have so few lines in this game before their respective characters disappear that you wonder why they even bothered coming back. So Spyro arrives in the Forbidden Forest, Ancient Grove, and is beset upon by an all-new type of enemy. Joke, it's just dogs again. Okay, we do come across some new enemies here, but they're basically reskins from A New Beginning, and even have the same attacks. Grove Mites are purple versions of the Fire Beetles from Munitions Forge, Grove Beasts are the same as the growths found in A New Beginning Swamp, and what should be the newest, most exciting enemies to encounter, the hyena-like scavengers, well, they're reskins of my good old favourite, the apes. Is there no escape from them? Ape escape. Now, I have been told that a possible reason Krome Studios used so many assets and models from A New Beginning was because of a small budget, and I want to thank my friend Emile DeBoss for pointing me in the direction of a developer commentary for Ratchet & Clank. During the video, game designer Mike Stout explains that the budgets for the Legend of Spyro series were incredibly low.
So about the Spyro thing, I can talk to it just a little before we're done.
Yeah, okay.
From what I heard, the budgets on those games were really low. And the producers who were working on the game really, really wanted them to be great, but they only had, you know, however much, like $1 million or something, right? Which is nothing to make a game.
Yeah.
There were a lot of struggles that they had to go through to make the games even as playable as they were.
I'm going to assume that having actors like Elijah Wood and Gary Oldman didn't help their budget either. Stout was told this by a friend, so it isn't official information and can't be taken as fact. But it would make sense as to why Krome Studios reused and reskinned so many assets and models from A New Beginning. So if you're starting to get a bit of deja vu by now, there's a possible explanation as to why. After Spyro platforms his way through the ancient grove, he comes across the aforementioned scavengers, before blacking out once again. Sparks, who had been happily munching on butterflies the entire time, love the homage to OG Sparks by the way, lets out a loud burp which gives away their position to the scavengers. Spyro awakens once again in the dreamscape, so you know what it's time for. New ability! Spyro regains his power over ice and makes his way to the pool to talk with the Chronicler, who remains as cryptic as ever with his words. He gives Spyro a vision of the Mountain of Malifor, explaining that this is where evil ghosty wosties go once they leave their mortal bodies.
Silent the wandering phantoms and lost spirits of those who had turned to darkness, but to the spirits themselves and the black-hearted goes by another name.
The Well of Souls.
It's not a nice place, basically. Spyro reawakens and calls for Sparks, who comes zooming in with a bunch of scavengers hot on his wings. I'm not sure how we went from here to here. Apparently Spyro teleported while he was knocked out. Sounds like another game character I know. We get to test out Spyro's new ice powers on these guys, and I have to say, so far ice is shaping up to be my favourite elemental ability this time around. The tail whip is so useful, especially as this game just loves to throw tons of enemies at Spyro in areas that restrict movement. Ice can also be used to traverse the poisonous pools of water by using the Polar Bomb ability to create a temporary makeshift platform. This is turning into a Totally Spies episode for me. Did any of you guys watch Totally Spies? You know how Jerry always gave the girls some form of gadget that just so happened to come into use in that same episode? Yeah, that's the Eternal Night for me. Learn a new ability, just so happen I need that ability to progress. What a coincidence. Spyro eventually comes to a scavenger camp where much slaughter commences. Let's just zoom through this bit because it goes on for a while. Spyro beats hyenas up, gets to the ship, and fires the cannon to open up a new area. We get another fight against an aerial combatant, and it's exactly the same as before with the assassin. I think it was by this point that I started to lose interest in this game, and if I wasn't doing this for a history video, I probably would have quit by now. However, for the good of my viewers, I continued. Something I wish I hadn't done when I came to this next section of platforms. You have to jump Spyro from branch to branch and jellyfish to jellyfish to reach the next area. And if you're an idiot like me who wanted to go for the orange relic, you're gonna die a few times, mostly due to awkward double jumping and gliding. You know what, let's just fast forward this again. I'm losing the will to live here. Fight these big tree dudes and the camera in a tiny annoying room, do some more jellyfish bouncing, fight some more tree dudes along with their evil doggos, platform a little bit, and ta-da! You've reached the tree. Only it isn't a nice tree. It's a big, dangerous tree with arms, legs, and a bad attitude. Look familiar at all? So here is the first proper boss of the game, Arboric, and it's a strafing battle.
Why didn't you dodge?
The game gives you no indication as to what you're supposed to do for this fight, so I spent a good 10 minutes of it just throwing firebombs all over the place and trying to dodge Arboric's punches and kicks before I worked out the objective. You're supposed to use Firebomb to light Arboric's limbs and chest on fire, but aiming and landing the damn ability is so awkward that I felt like lighting myself on fire instead. Also, if you don't light Arbrick up fast enough, he'll spin around rapidly to put himself out and gain health, because screw you player, suffer the mechanics. Once you have managed to toast him, the fight will move into a second phase. Now, technically I died before the second phase began, but because it was already transitioning, the game let me continue on with full health. Shh, don't tell anyone. Luckily, the second phase is a lot easier. Arbrick chases Spyro up a grassy ridge and begins to climb it himself. As he does so, you can spam Firebomb at him to eat away at his health. Once atop the ridge, all Arbrick does is stomp and kick. Incredibly easy to avoid due to the predictable animations. Throw a bit more fire about the place and down Arbrick goes. Wait, why did we kill him again? What was the point of coming here? While Spyro and Sparks ponder the same question, the duo is ambushed by more scavengers. The largest one has two parrot things perched atop his shoulders, which turn out to be the brains behind the scavenger operations. The bird brains, if you will. Oh, I'm so funny, aren't I? They explain they were here to capture Arbrick for a tournament, but seeing as Spyro killed him, he'll make a suitable substitute. Also, I might have to lower Sparks to runner-up for most annoying dialogue in the game in favour of this guy.
If I were you, I'd shut my mouth. I ain't gonna say it again.
Wanna take your own advice there, buddy? Spyro is knocked out and carried to their floating pirate ship, and the next cutscene shows the duo imprisoned below deck. Sparks proceeds to break the fourth wall with his rendition of Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, before Spyro meets up with an old friend. Now, whoever was in charge of the audio for this cutscene needs a good smack, because if it weren't for the subtitles, I'd have no idea what these two characters were saying to each other.
You are on Scab's ship. We luckily been made to compete in the arena fights like the other prisoners. I too am a prisoner here, as are many of my kinsmen. But the modes are too frail to make for worthwhile entertainment, so we are made to serve grog to the scavengers.
Before Moliere can help Spyro in any way, the parrots and their scavenger turn up to prepare Spyro for his tournament. He'll be taken into an arena where multiple fights will take place, the first being against
The Blundertails!
The fight is easy enough if you can avoid the snippy claws and cannonballs they shoot from their tails. When they block, use Spyro's knock-up attack to break it, and when they're stunned, beat the crap out of them. Then finish them off with a tail strike or a horn dive. Once the fight is over, Spyro will black out again and wind up back in the dreamscape. Oh boy, Earth power time! Once Spyro's thrown dirt in the training dummy's eyes, he makes his way to the final chamber and demands to know what is happening. The chronicler shows Spyro a vision of the apes travelling towards the mountain of Malafor, and gives him some more information on the Night of Eternal Darkness.
The Well of Souls beckons them as the Night of Eternal Darkness approaches.
What is the Night of Eternal Darkness?
It is the night when the celestial moons come together in a great eclipse. It shrouds our world in darkness. The Well of Souls is the pinnacle of its terrible shadow, stirring the spirits of the deceased from their eternal rest, and permitting them to roam freely within the halls of the mountain, if only for a short while. And soon, the night of eternal darkness will be upon us. Find me in the celestial caves of the White Isle.
Finally, we're going to meet the chronicler. Oh yeah, Spyro's still here, and it's time for another fight.
The one and only
I wasn't exactly sure how I was supposed to damage this thing, let alone defeat it, as just touching the ship seemed to hurt Spyro. Not to mention it likes to spew out flames and fire cannonballs from time to time. Luckily, I still remembered the battle with the controller and Steam in A New Beginning, and seeing as everything else in this game appears to be a copy-paste job, I figured it was one of those crash it into the wall type fights. It would appear my assumptions were correct. Once immobilised, the ship takes massive damage from Spyro's Earth Flail. So once you know the general gist of the fight, it's easy peasy. It still made me rage a couple of times though, because stun locks. Once the fight's over, Spyro and Sparks are thrown back into their prison cell, and they get another secret meeting with Moliere, who has something to show them.
Yahoo! Fan mail!
Dear friend, there are whispers going about the ship. Word of your captivity has traveled quickly. Many of the prisoners are uneasy. They say that the Ape King himself has placed a bounty on you, and all of the dragons. These are dark times, but know this, you have allies. I look forward to the day when we can meet. Hunter of Avalon.
Before Spyro can ponder any more on whom this mysterious, and I'm sure devilishly handsome hunter is, he's thrown back into the arena for another boss fight. This time, he's up against
The Executioner!
oh look, another reskin job. Apart from this random bullshit move that takes half of Spyro's health off, the fight is relatively easy, and can be cheesed by staying above the Executioner's head and abusing Dragon Time while air attacking. To be honest, this whole arena section was actually a fun and challenging bit of gameplay for me. I really enjoyed the various enemies that were thrown at Spyro. Also, is anyone else getting vibes of Jak 3 by now? I thought about the similarities when Spyro first learned Dragon Time. Now he's in an arena proving his worth.
Tonight, we have a special bonus match.
Cool, a bonus match.
Spyro the Dragon versus the former Queen of Conquer herself, Cinder!
What? Cinder? Oh boy, this will be a fun fight. Friend versus friend, dragon versus dragon, purple versus...
Relax. I'm just trying to put on a show for the crowd while we figure out what to do.
Oh.
Don't trust her. She wants to eat me.
What's happening?
Get away from me! Help! Cinder!
Dude, you have wings! You can fly! Why aren't you helping her? And so starts my most hated part of the game on account of its repetitiveness, lack of checkpoints, and overstayed welcome. Now, I complained about a new beginning having a lack of variety in its environments, but the Eternal Night takes the cake. From starting in the arena to finally leaving the Scavenger's pirate ships took me around 2 hours. 2 hours! The entire game took me around 7 to complete, so over a quarter of the game spent in this one crappy area with its crappy platforming and its crappy enemies. So this first section of gameplay has Spyro in a corridor fighting scavengers and exploring various rooms until he finds Moliere, who cannot leave until his people are freed. Some meh platforming and box pushing later, and Spyro does just that. He bids adieu to Moliere and company before continuing on through the ship. Let's just summarise these next few parts like we did before because there's nothing particularly special about them. Lever pull and Dragon Time your way into the next area, beat up a horde of scavengers, fire a cannon to progress further up, beat up more scavengers, make your way over the arena, and fight the biggest horde of enemies I've ever seen in a Spyro game. On one health bar. Yeah. This part of the game can burn in hell. I seriously spent 10 minutes fighting these enemies, being careful to save the little guys for replenishing my health, and using my elemental powers on the big bad dudes and the cannons. It was a slow process, but hey, I survived. I wiped the sweat off my brow, and thanked the gaming gods for letting me survive that nightmare of a battle. Then, to my horror, I realised I had to fight 2 Blundertails that were hidden in a giant crate. I tried my hardest, I really did, but the fatigue of the last battle had taken its toll on my fingers and reaction times, and I died like a numpty. Wait, the checkpoint is before this whole fight? Are you kidding me? Right, that's it. Clearly this game does not want me to play smartly, just murder these guys with extreme prejudice and burn these gits into ash. See, this is why they're called the Furies, because you use them when the game has thoroughly pissed you off so much that you just want to get the fight over as quickly as possible. Anyway, once that's over with, and Spyro has contended with another wave of enemies, he can move on into the Scavenger Treasure Room, where he'll find a map that will lead him to the White Isle, and ultimately the Chronicler.
Well, if it isn't the Purple Menace, we hope you weren't thinking of leaving.
Yeah, we got a score to settle, chump!
Okay, Spyro, we could actually leave now. Remember, you have wings? You can fly out of here? Why are we even sticking around? This fight was a bloody nightmare. Scab, as he's known, gives almost no indication as to what ability he's about to use next. His sword and hook slash happen almost instantly, so there's no sneaking around him or jumping over his head, and the only time you can safely hit him is when his hook gets trapped in a wall. Couple in the fact that you have this tiny area to work with that's half set on fire, because, you know, fire hurts fire-breathing dragons, duh, and you can see why this scab battle is such a nightmare. Much death and cursing later, and I finally whittled down his health bar.
This is where we part ways.
What the... How is that even possible?
Yeah, Spyro. Almost as hard to believe as a dragon who doesn't use his own wings to save himself from falling to his own death. Okay, he's gone right though. I don't have to deal with him anymore. No! Look, he's even flying right here. Where is the logic in this game? This entire 35-minute section consists of Spyro gliding between various ships, beating up a butt-ton of scavengers, and dying to platforming, which by this point feels incredibly silly to do. I repeat, you have wings! Oh guys, tragic news! I somehow lost all the footage for this section, like just now, and I only have the boss to show you. Isn't that a bleeding shame? So round 2 with good old scabbers, and luckily this fight is a bit easier, as we have more area to work with. Doesn't mean I didn't die a billion times though. The biggest issue I had was with these falling rocks. I couldn't see where they were going to land, but then it suddenly dawned on me that my emulator wasn't rendering shadows, and if my gaming experience has taught me anything, it's that big heavy things that are going to land on your head are always precursed by shadows. In fact, one might call it a foreshadowing. Ho 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 ho. Anyway, avoid rocks, kill Scab's minions, dodge his weird sword energy beams, and beat the crap out of him. Yay, we won! Sparks finally does something that makes me appreciate having him around.
I pity the fool that messes with us. Welcome to the wild earth.
Wings! As they fly over the ocean in search of the White Isle, Spyro has another blackout session. He drops out of the sky and plunges into the ocean, and that was the end of Spyro's journey. Nah, I'm kidding. Luckily there's a friendly giant turtle passing by who gives the duo a lift. Spyro awakens for the final time in the dreamscape, so you know what that means. Electricity! When Spyro makes his way to the final chamber, he tries to talk to the Chronicler, but gets no reply. He decides to take matters into his own claws and looks into the pool of visions in front of him. A cutscene plays showing Cinder chained and led to the leader of the apes, Ghoul.
So, the traitor returns.
You can't go through with this, Ghoul.
Nothing can prevent this. We are merely here to welcome our master back into the realm and join him at his side. But fear not, Cinder. You've been such a faithful servant. I'm sure he'll take you back. And if not, you will have the honor of being the first to perish by his hand.
Once Spyro reawakens, he finds himself conveniently at the White Isle. Now, this section of gameplay was my absolute favourite of the Eternal Night. It almost makes up for the travesty that was the pirate ship section. Almost. I love the level design of this place. I love the challenges that are set out for Spyro, and I especially love the music. Like the title theme, you have an orchestral choir singing to you as you play through the area, though they're more reserved than the monks. It's beautiful to listen to, but also eerie with hints of mystery and foreboding. The first half of this area, while beautiful to look at, isn't much to write home about. A sprinkling of bad guys here, a smidge of platforming there, and a dash of easy puzzle solving to top it all off. We do meet 2 new enemies though, the first being fire elementals, which are essentially reskins of the ogres from A New Beginning, and the crystal ball spiders, which are necessary in order to complete the first challenge. Spyro will need to defeat one spider at a time and roll their crystal balls into one of the 4 elemental holders. Once 4 crystal balls have been set, shoot each ball with the correct element and continue on through the temple. Now, I personally enjoyed this section of gameplay. I know from what I've read it's not everybody's idea of fun due to its repetitiveness and copy-paste mechanics. So before Spyro can continue any further, he'll need to complete 4 challenges, each based around a particular element. They all contain enemies to fight and a big bad boss at the end who I'll get to in a second, but the general gist is: fire, light candles that'll turn over spiked platforms for a limited time; ice, make your own platforms across deadly ooze; electricity, shoot orbs at crystals in the walls that'll raise up platforms; and earth, earth is actually just a beat 'em up section. When you reach the end of each of these challenges, there'll be a teleporter that'll take Spyro to the big bad boss. Honestly, they're a little disappointing, being nothing more than a copy-paste job of each other, with the only difference being their names and looks based on the element they represent. Once Spyro has bested all 4 elemental challenges, one final challenge remains. Oh boy, I wonder what this could possibly be. Wait, are you serious? That's just adult Cinder in various colours. The only challenging thing about this fight is remembering which button on the controller correlates to which element, as the Cinder doppelganger can only be injured when Spyro has the same element equipped. So bish bash bosh, and we finally get to meet the Chronicler.
The entire history of the dragon race. It looks like it's all here.
It is. Well, most of it.
Did you hear that? It spoke to me!
The records in this hall date back to the beginning of time. Nearly.
The Chronicler!
Yes, Spyro. It is I. And I've been waiting for you.
Now he's actually appeared in the flesh, I should really mention his voice actor, Martin Jarvis. His best known voice acting roles are as Alfred Pennyworth in the Batman Arkham series, and Nurgle from the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. And yes, he's even had a voice acting stint as Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings Conquest game. Come on, we were all thinking Gandalf when we heard him speak.
Oh yes, but I have my books, and I watch and wait, and listen for things to come, and then add them to the books of time.
The Chronicler then gives Spyro a bit more detail on the night of the temple raid years ago.
Can I see?
Of course you can. This one is yours. Look. You've seen this hideous creature before.
Why is he in my book?
It was Ghoul who led the raid on the temple the night of your birth, when Ignitus rescued your egg.
And when they took Cinders.
Yes. That was most unfortunate.
The book also tells parts of the future, so Spyro demands to see what will happen to Cinder.
Spyro, you must understand, when she was taken by Ghoul, she was poisoned and corrupted, made to do the Dark Master's bidding. Her entire life has been spent in shadow. She knows no other way. And when the Dark Master returns, she will concede. No one can resist the temptation. Not even the strongest among us. There was once a dragon, long ago, whose raw power was far greater than anyone had ever seen or could imagine. At first, he mastered fire, which was odd because he was not a fire dragon. Then came ice and wind, and other abilities none thought possible. Is this story sounding familiar?
It was a purple dragon, like me.
The first purple dragon. In the beginning, he was encouraged, and secrets of elemental mastery were passed on to him willingly by the elders. But his power was limitless. It knew no boundary. It consumed everything. When he would not stop, he was cast into exile. And from his new fortress within the mountain, he built an armor, not of dragons, but of apes. The sheer weight of his malice cracked the very foundation of the mountain, splitting the earth, creating a pit of despair, where the lost souls of this world could reside.
The Well of Souls.
Created by the very beast who now seeks to escape it.
Turns out the reason the Chronicler called Spyro to him was not to give him advice on how to stop the bad things from happening, but to shelter him through the worst of what's to come. That just won't do for Spyro, and ever the stubborn dragon, he charges off to go save his friends. Well, friend. As I said before, the other dragons don't even make an appearance past the beginning of the game. Which also reminds me, this is the last time we see the Chronicler in the Eternal Night. I'm glad we spent the majority of the game looking for this dude, just to ignore his advice and leave anyway. Maybe this is what the Chronicler meant by
your impulsive nature.
And so starts the final chapter of the Eternal Night. Thank God. Spyro and Sparks must make their way through this snowy fortress and into the mountain of Malifor, or Well of Souls if you prefer. Snow, fortress. I wonder where I've seen that combination before. For all the fun I had on the White Isle, this place sucked it right back out of me. It's ugly to look at in my opinion, being very grey and dark in most areas, and after dealing with irritating laser traps, awkward platforming, and combat against some of the toughest enemies in the game on the smallest platform possible, I was about ready to sell my soul to the devil just to get this game over with. Then came the worst moment in all of my Spyro history gameplay. For those faint of heart, look away now, for this is where Tori cheated to get through a particularly difficult section of gameplay. So you end up on this rather large platform which just screams big battle time, and sure enough, some rather large and unfriendly chaps teleport in to give Spyro a good beatdown. Okay, this is definitely Icy Fortress all over. We've got the undead cow monsters now. I hated this section of gameplay with a passion. As I said before, no matter how I played, I couldn't beat the wave after wave of enemies pouring in. Too aggressive and I took unnecessary damage, too carefully and the fight would eventually have me overwhelmed. A combination of both didn't work either. I could not do anything to win this fight. So you know what I did? I looked up a cheat page, desperately hoping for some sort of invincibility code to use. Nothing invincibility related? But what the heck is Dark Spyro? I guess I'll give it a go and see. Well, that did the trick. Now that's out of the way and Dark Spyro has been put back into his cage, it's time to head to the final boss. But first, mandatory platforming and ape murder. Spyro finally makes his way to the top of the mountain, and there's a little exchange between the brothers before they both dive into the Well of Souls.
What is this?
It looks like the entrance to a horrible pit of despair, of which we will probably never escape. But we should probably go inside to be sure. Woo!
He's so weird.
Okay, I actually like this little conversation. If you have weird siblings, or are in fact the weird sibling yourself, you'll appreciate this bit of dialogue. You know what, Billy West Sparks? You're not so bad. We get another pre-rendered cutscene showing Spyro finally meeting Ghoul.
The purple well played. It's fitting that you should be here tonight, as we bear witness to the dawn of a new age.
By the way, I forgot to mention it earlier, but Ghoul is voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson, the same voice actor for Toridori. That's all you need to know. Carry on. One villain monologue later, and Cinder is set upon Spyro to fight him. But don't worry, it's a trick, guys.
Same as last time. Line me up with a staff.
This isn't over.
Well, that didn't work so well. And so starts the final boss battle. I actually really enjoyed this fight. It's difficult, yes, but only up to the point until you learn Ghoul's patterns. And to be honest, a final boss battle should be difficult. A new beginning? Ghoul starts the fight pursuing Spyro and trying to slash him with his swords. It's easy enough to avoid by simply running away, but watch out when Ghoul teleports himself, because the camera has a nasty habit of making you run straight into him. He also fires bolts from time to time, but again, running away is the simplest solution. Eventually, Ghoul will start jumping into the air and slamming his swords into the ground. Each slam causes a wave of energy to blast out in a ring, which Spyro will need to jump over. Ghoul repeats this 5 times before getting his sword stuck in the ground, so use this opportunity to activate Dragon Time and smack his ass for massive damage. Repeat a number of times until Ghoul's health bar is depleted, and it's time for the second phase. Ghoul will slam the ground again, breaking it and sending both him and Spyro plummeting to the floor below. Ghoul's staff is smashed in the process, and as this happens, the moons finally eclipse, officially beginning the night of eternal darkness. Or the eternal night, if you will. You know the cheat I put in a little while ago? Yeah, it's time for Dark Spyro. This second phase is even easier than the first, as all you really have to do to defeat Ghoul is spam the square button. Sure, there's laser eye beams to avoid, and Ghoul will occasionally spin around wildly, turning himself into a vortex that sucks in Spyro, but I wouldn't worry about it. The laser beam does barely any damage, and as long as you're not near the edge of the platform, you're relatively safe even if you're hit by it. The vortex doesn't do any damage at all, it just throws Spyro high up into the air, to which he glides back down to the ground after anyway. So spam that square button until Ghoul's health bar is depleted, and you'll move into the third and final phase. Now, don't be like me. I didn't realise I was supposed to press R2 to activate a Fury, and just stood still pressing square like a ninny until Ghoul killed Spyro by lasering him off the edge. By the way, dying at any point in this fight not only sends you right back to phase 1, but also has you watch that 2-minute cutscene again. Thankfully mashing the L1 button skips it. So back to where I died, and this time I make sure to click R2. Okay, wait, I just want to do something here. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Spyro struggles to maintain control over his dark form, but luckily Cinder pushes him out of the evil beam of doom, and he reverts back to his normal self.
What have I done?
I mean, you defeated the bad guy. I'd say that was a good thing. The trio have only one escape route, but Spyro is too weak to even move. Realising they have no other choice, Spyro makes one last move to save his friends.
Ride out this storm and live to fight another day.
Get close to me, now!
Wait, how did he know he could do that? Oh, okay, I guess I'm not going to find out. Let's just take a few seconds to enjoy the beauty that is this end credits song. Even through the eternal crap that is this game, there are some fantastic moments that make me stop and watch, or listen in this case. A final cutscene plays at the end of the credits, showing Spyro, Cinder and Sparks encased in crystal. That sounds familiar. Also, is it just me, or do the dragons look older? Is that even possible if they're frozen in time? The chronicler gives us some exposition towards the next game, and we get a brief glimpse of a character you may recognise. And that's the end of Spyro the Eternal Night. There's a little more for you to do afterwards if you want, such as the various dragon challenges that can be found in the extras menu, and the art gallery where you can see all the awesome concept art for the game, but that's it really. So, What do I think of the Eternal Night after finishing it? Honestly, it's a mixed bag for me. For example, while I appreciate Krome Studios trying to make the combat harder, because let's face it, a New Beginnings combat was a joke at times, stun locks and tiny spaces that mess up the camera are not the way to do it. Luckily, the elemental power changes made up for the crappy combat at times, and were a heck of a lot of fun to use. In fact, one of the most memorable and entertaining moments for me was found in the extras menu with the dragon challenges after I finished the game. I only had one unlocked, so I thought, why not try it? So much fun. I want more of this, damn it! The different areas Spyro visited also left me scratching my head in utter bewilderment. While the White Isle was fantastic to look at and never overstayed its welcome, bringing with it new enemies and interesting challenges, the pirate fleet was an abomination. Okay, the arena wasn't too bad, but that's like 20 minutes of okay gameplay in a section that altogether takes 2 hours. 2 hours of the same platforming, the same enemies, and brown. Lots and lots of brown. The story and dialogue was also a problem for me. At times, things felt a little too convenient. It's convenient that Ignitus knew where to find the tree from Spyro's dream, even though it was only a hunch. It's convenient that Spyro learns a new ability that'll just so happen to help him cross a deadly pool of ooze. It's convenient that Spyro knew how to cast that time-stopping crystal bullshit, even though he's never used that ability before. And the dialogue. Oh my gosh, could the voice actors actually, act like they want to be here? Please, someone get Elijah Wood a Red Bull, and someone else remind Gary Oldman of the huge amount he's probably being paid to do 5 minutes of lines. And then there's all the issues with reskins and recolours. I can understand the need to do it. It saves time and money, and if Krome Studios really didn't have that much of a budget, then fair enough. But it makes the Eternal Night feel less like the second game in the Legend of Spyro series, and more like an expansion to a new beginning. Now, I did enjoy the final battle with Ghoul, and I even let out a tiny little tear after watching the ending and listening to the credits theme. Such feels much sad. But in my eyes, it's not enough to forgive the game for all its flaws. At the end of the day, The Legend of Spyro The Eternal Night, for me, is an okay game. And that's a low okay. For those curious, and because I always do this at the end of my videos, let's look at the game rankings scores. PS2, 58.64%, 18 reviews. Wii, 62.06%, 8 reviews. DS, 56.33%, 6 reviews. And surprisingly, Game Boy Advance, 81.75%, 4 reviews. I'm definitely going to have to check that one out at some point. Anyway, that's my retrospective on The Legend of Spyro The Eternal Night. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and let me know what you thought of the new format. I personally feel it works so much better, but I definitely want to hear your thoughts too. And before I go, shout out to my biggest supporters on Patreon, Ray Bungart, Albert Rodriguez, and Austin Rosenbaum. I really appreciate the support, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all later. Bye bye!